Hey guys, Dan here with this week's TV news and reviews. Welcome to the show. This is our last week, really, before diving into some of the new streaming services because we've got Apple TV Plus premiering in just a day or two, and then in a few weeks we've got Disney Plus. So we're going to sort of tackle those by themselves. But we're all done right now with the network, with the broadcast network shows. They all have been covered by me at this point. So there'll be more coming in the weeks, as things get canceled and, things end. And so we'll see more of those soon. But for this week, we've got one of the biggest shows of the fall, at least from word of mouth, is HBO's The Watchmen. So we're going to talk about that first in a little bit when we do the reviews. And then we've also got a couple of Netflix shows, Living with Myself, starring Paul Rudd, and a superhero show called Raising Dion. And we've got a show on Facebook Watch. I've never seen anything on that before, so let's see how I liked Limetown. And then we'll close it out with a game show called The Misery Index, which can be found on TBS. But first up, I want to tell you about a few news items that are of particular interest to me, at least. The first one is just about the new renewals and full season upgrades for some of the new fall shows, because I announced the other week that NBC has sort of canceled Sunnyside, or I should say moved it over to their Peacock app and streaming service. And then Bluff City Law they announced, like, okay, we're going to run the episodes we have, but no new ones. So a few other networks are doing the exact opposite of that. Basically, CBS, ABC, and the CW have really gone full force into their fall series, giving a lot of them full season commitments already. The CW has only been on the air a few weeks with Batwoman and Nancy Drew, and both of those, let's give them the full season treatment already. So we can expect more episodes of that. Now, I didn't particularly care for either of those shows, so I won't be watching, but if you liked it, then there you go. You can see more of that. CBS has given not exactly full season orders, but at least episode upgrades to all of their new fall shows. The Unicorn and Carol's Second Act each got 5 extra episodes, bringing the total to, I think, 16. Bob Hart's Abishola did get a full season, so that's going to be 22 episodes. All Rise, the law show opposite Bluff City Law, got a few new episodes. I can't remember the number. I think it was 5 or 6, though, as well. And then Evil is sticking with the 13-episode order that they have for Season 1, but it was already greenlit for Season 2, which is, I think, the first... No, I have another item that has also been renewed for Season 2 already. But yeah, so CBS is backing all 5 of their new shows very much. The other show I'm thinking of is Bless the Hearts. Fox already ordered a second season of that, which makes sense because, animation, other than, like, South Park, takes a while to, come through on. So it makes sense that Fox would want to approve this as early as they can to get the animators working on a Season 2. So Bless the Hearts will be back next season as well. That's the only thing really on Fox that has been talked about. Almost Family, I think they've sort of said they're going to be done with the season as ordered, which will be in, like, January, I think. But they haven't canceled it or anything. They just said, okay, we're not going to order new episodes, but we're going to stick with what we have. So, yeah, that's been going on at Fox. I can't remember if Fox has any other new shows. I don't think I think, they have some coming up, but none that have premiered yet. Like, there's a 911 spinoff, and a couple others in the pipeline, but I don't think they've premiered anymore so far. They have so much sports right now on Fox. First of all, World Series is going on. Well, it just ended tonight, but they have been doing the World Series, and then they have a bunch of NFL nights, so that might explain some of that. But then over on ABC, Most of their stuff has gotten renewed or topped off as well. The only one they really haven't commented on, like Mixed Dish, got a full season, um, and what the one with Colby Smulders that I really liked, Stumptown, that got another. I think it got topped off to a full season, and then Emergence is the only one they really haven't said anything about yet. But it was sort of always designed to be a limited run series, so I think sort of like CBS's Evil, if they do decide to bring Emergence back, it's going to be next season. It's not going to be let's do more episodes this season. So, there's no really vote of confidence or trouble there. Just seems kind of status quo for Emergence. But yeah, so my thoughts are the entire landscape of television has changed in just really the last few years, I would say. It just because watching habits are so different that so many people just don't watch live TV at all. So now with the ratings are these like, +7s and +3s, which is, 3-day delay or 7-day delay on people's DVRs or their Hulu. Netflix is now like starting to get in the mix as well. Of course, Netflix, you can't really watch current seasons, but Hulu or on demand or that kind of stuff. So all of that gets factored in now, and some of these shows are doing great on delay. Like Grey's Anatomy still performs incredibly well for ABC on delay, and so does Empire. Even though it's the last season of Empire on Fox, it's still performing very well. Like basically over, 2 times what they get on the live show they watch, in the 7 days. So it's all very interesting, but I think it's encouraging that a lot of these shows are being given chances, because I think the problem with some of the shows in the last 3 or 4 years, because attitudes of watching are changing so much. I think unless you're on the CW, where your ratings don't really matter as much as like word of mouth, it's been very cutthroat. Like there's been a lot of shows that I thought were great that ended after half a season or 6 episodes or whatever, just because they weren't really hitting the mark. Whereas 5 years earlier, those numbers, would have been, oh yeah, you're out after 2 episodes. This is performing horribly, but something that gets a $5 million people, rating now is like, oh my god, that's amazing, 5 million people, so great. Whereas, like 5 years ago, 5 million people would have been like, well, you're canceled after, 3 episodes. So I think it's good that networks are sticking with these shows. I mean, you figure they pour so much money into them that it would make sense that they would want to at least sort of get a return on their investment. And with so many other platforms now, like if something fails on ABC, well, maybe it would be good for Disney Plus or Hulu, which is, all of those are owned by Disney. NBC now has the Peacock, and CBS has All Access. So there's so many different venues to put a show, to get eyeballs on it, that I feel like if the network believes in it, then then it has a better shot than certain other times. Like back in the 80s and 90s, when Cheers and Seinfeld premiered, like they did horribly, but the network was like, you know what, we believe in this show, we're going to stick to it. And then that all kind of fell away about 15 years ago or so. So it's nice to see that networks are going to stick with some of these shows, because honestly, some shows start out very strong out of the gate and it's great, and sometimes they don't. So some of these you might have to stick with, but I'm very excited about some of these for sure. I don't care about some of them. Bob Hart's Abishola I didn't like, but I'm glad that the Unicorn and Carol's second act are doing well. I'm glad Stumptown is doing well. So looking forward to more of that. Up next, I want to talk about this new Muppets talk show. Disney Plus has sort of been really back and forth on Muppet content, because at one point we were going to have a follow-up to Muppets Take Manhattan, and I think it was supposed to be a series as opposed to like a TV movie, but that was shelved. I talked about that, I think, on my very first TV news and reviews. So, that was out. But they always said, like, okay, we're going to have this series of shorts as well with the Muppets. And that's going to sort of be part of the Disney Plus lineup. But now they've announced an actual, like, another show that is going to happen. It's called Earth to Ned. It's going to be a half-hour talk show. And it's Disney Plus exclusive. And basically, we don't know Ned, but he's an alien. He's a Muppet alien. And he's going to do celebrity interviews and stuff like that. It reminded me, when I sort of read the synopsis of this, of two things. Number one, the Space Ghost Coast to Coast, which I sort of remember vaguely from my college days, but that was like a big hit on Cartoon Network. I think pre-Adult Swim even, but sort of had the same attitude as an Adult Swim type show. And then the talk show that Alf did, does anybody remember that? It was like, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, where Alf would interview celebrities. It was right around the time that him and Terry Bradshaw were doing those commercials for, like, I don't know, was it 1-800-COLLECT or something? I don't remember anything about that, but I remember it was Alf and Terry Bradshaw. But anyway, so, like, Alf was having his rebirth, so they gave him his own talk show. So the synopsis of this sounds sort of like that, where there's going to be famous people dropping by and basically talking to an alien puppet. So even though it's not very new or provocative, it is the Muppets. I usually give anything the Muppets do a chance, or Jim Henson Productions for that matter. So I don't know if it's going to be like a weekly show. Like, Disney Plus is sort of following the Netflix mentality of the whole binging. So most of their shows are going to premiere all at once. If it's a 10-episode series, all 10 episodes will be up. But Netflix has definitely done different things with that template. Like when they had the Chelsea Handler talk show, that was once a week. Or maybe it was every night. I think it was just once a week. But so Disney Plus, could do something like that, especially if these actors or whoever, are coming on the show to plug a project. I don't know. Do they want to be talking about a project that doesn't air for 3 months just to get all the episodes up on Disney Plus? I don't know. So to me, it would make more sense to do a weekly show of that. I don't know. I'm not all for the binging anyway, but I know people love it. But that's just me, I guess. But I feel like something like a talk show, not that you need necessarily topical jokes or anything like that if you're not going to do like a monologue, but I think that you should have guests on that are, current with whatever the project is. And I would think ideally that would be the week of, or, within a couple of weeks or whatever. So I don't know. It'll be interesting as that unfolds. But I'm glad that Disney is not abandoning the Muppets as a platform. Because it's like, I look at like the new ads that are up now on Hulu that I've been seeing for Disney Plus. And at the bottom, when it's, the commercial's over and it's talking about all the different, properties, it says, Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, but it doesn't say Muppets. And I don't know. I mean, maybe it should. Maybe that's not a big enough property for them. But it also doesn't say The Simpsons, which I think is weird, because that's, like, huge that you can watch any episode of The Simpsons from the first 30 years, of its existence. I think that's freaking cool. So it doesn't include that either. But I guess when you have so many things to tout in your commercials, maybe you don't need all that. But yeah, obviously Marvel and Star Wars are huge for them. But I think the Muppets and The Simpsons are also two very cool properties that Disney owns. That's going to be a part of Disney Plus. So I don't know. I'd like to see more advertising there, but I'm just glad that they're giving the Muppets talk show another chance. One of the things I didn't look for on the big list that Disney Plus released about here's everything that's going to be on our platform. I didn't look to see about the old Muppets TV shows. Obviously, the newer Muppet movies will be on there. I did see that. But, they own Muppets Tonight. They own that one-season Muppets show from like 4 years ago that I thought was really funny. So I don't know if those will be on there or not. Or Muppet Babies would be really cool to see, like the original, not the newer one. But I know there's a lot of rights issues with that because they used to just like open up a closet door and there would be E.T. playing or something. But of course now Disney owns most of those properties, so whatever. But it'll be interesting to see. So the last bit of news I wanted to talk about is a Fresh Off the Boat spinoff. There wasn't much in the way of reboots this week. I know usually I have my segment called This Week in Reboots. There's like a couple things a couple actors have signed on to the Lizzie McGuire reboot, but I didn't watch Lizzie McGuire, so I don't really care about that. But Fresh Off the Boat, I watch. In fact, I just watched 2 episodes today from last season. But apparently this season, and actually coming up pretty soon, I think in a November episode, November 18th. Oh, I'm sorry, the episode will be filming on November 18th, so we might not see it, I don't know, till early next year or something, but it's going to be part of the 6th season of Fresh Off the Boat. Basically, it's going to be about this Indian family whose daughter attends school with Eddie, who's the oldest son in Fresh Off the Boat, and I guess their interactions in this one episode are sort of going to serve kind of as a backdoor pilot. But from what I read, like, backdoor pilots are when, if you don't know, when an episode of a TV show that sort of seems kind of random and like introduces all these new characters, and it basically gives the network a feel for what the show would be. Like The Office did one in the last season about Dwight's family on Schrute Farms because they were looking to do a spinoff about Dwight's family. That obviously never took, but most big shows at some point have done the old backdoor pilot. But from what I read about this, it's going to be an episode regardless, and then from the episode, ABC is going to decide whether they want to order a pilot, a real pilot, like a different episode pilot for this show, and then from there decide if it goes into the mix to be a show. So it's going to be a little bit different than a backdoor pilot, but I like Fresh Off the Boat. It's one of those performers for ABC that it seems like it always does okay. Sort of like The Middle. Like The Middle was always like a solid performer for ABC, whether it was on Wednesday or whether it was on Tuesday. And everybody I know that watches The Middle, or used to when it was on, like loved it. Like my family, a bunch of my friends, like big fans of The Middle. Oh my God, what a show. But, it didn't get any awards. It didn't really get any press. It was just always there, but it was always a solid player for ABC. I feel like Fresh Off the Boat is a lot like that. Like, it doesn't quite get the awards love that Blackish gets or that Modern Family used to get. But it seems consistent enough in its ratings that they keep, heaping on, additional seasons. And of course, there was that dust-up a few months ago where the 6th season was announced, and Constance Wu was like kind of pissed about it because it meant she couldn't do this other project that she wanted to do, and sort of got in a little bit of trouble on Twitter because of that. But I don't know. I mean, it seems like a consistent performer for ABC. So I don't know. ABC's all about the spin-off game right now, which is okay because most of the shows are quality. I've only seen the first episode of Mixed Dish, so I can't really speak to that too much, but I did watch the whole first season of Grownish on Freeform, and that was pretty good. And then Schooled, which is the Goldberg spinoff. I've seen a few episodes of that, and I enjoy that. The Connors, I only count as a spinoff sort of by necessity, because of course, they were trying to continue with Roseanne. So I don't know that I really count that, but other than that, it seems like ABC's really trying to, move with these comedy spinoffs, which is cool because we don't see a lot of comedy spinoffs anymore. Usually when there's a spinoff, it's of a drama or an action show, like Law and Order, this, or the Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, Chicago PD, all of that kind of stuff, or on CBS, all their, like, investigator shows, NCIS Los Angeles, NCIS this, and CSI that, whatever. So we don't see a lot of comedy uh, sequels anymore, spin-offs. And so I'm happy that they're looking at that. I'm happy that ABC's sort of keeping that tradition alive. I mean, I guess over on CBS you do have Young Sheldon, but it's a completely separate show. Like, Big Bang Theory was a multi-camera comedy with a studio audience and everything. Young Sheldon is not that at all. Single comedy, or single camera comedy. So at least these ones on ABC are all within the same kind of vibe of the original show, and I think that helps. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses. But now let's move into the reviews. So like I said at the top here, we've got 5 reviews to bring to you, and the first one is going to be Watchmen. I called it The Watchmen at the top of the show. It's just Watchmen, don't criticize me. But this is HBO's kind of, crown, let's say, now that Game of Thrones is done. They obviously need something that is huge for them. On the comedy plot, they've got, Veep is gone from their lineup. Game of Thrones now is gone from their action and drama lineup. So Watchmen, there's no comedy in it, so that's not trying to replace Veep, but they need some kind of breakout hit. This is a big transition time for HBO because with all the streaming services, it's like most of their shows are done. Anything I think of importance on HBO the last few years is over. Veep, Girls, Game of Thrones, I said already. I mean, those are like the major ones I think of. I guess they still run that show, Ballers, isn't that them with The Rock? I watched the first season of that. I think that was HBO. But anyway, so they've selected Watchmen to be, I think, sort of the crown in their empire currently, and they'll have their HBO Go Max or whatever, HBO Max or whatever the hell it's called. They're gonna have their own streaming platform coming up soon with all of their shows, I guess, from all time, which actually would be really cool because I would love to go back and see some of those older shows that I was either too young for at the time or just never caught up with. The only really shows I've watched from HBO, at least with any regularity, have been, and they were all after the fact because I never had HBO. So, Sex and the City, Larry Sanders, Sopranos. Finally, Merlin got me to watch that, which was excellent. 6 Feet Under, I watched for like 2 or 3 seasons. There might be 1 or 2 others. I mean, Veep, I watched. I mean, I'm still watching Veep, but I'm so behind on it. I think I'm on season 4. And I think that's about it. So it would be cool to kind of delve back into their history and see some of their older shows. But anyway, Watchmen is, of course, based on the graphic novel, which is, super, super popular, by Alan Moore. And then they had a movie, which was about 10 years ago, I guess. What was that, 2000? I think it was 2009. And that was, based on the book, of course, as well. This sort of is, okay, so I'm not going to give away too much of the plot because I think there's some spoilers here because it's not the same. Like, even if you've read the graphic novel and you saw the movie, this is real different from that. So, I mean, not necessarily in tone, but there's just, there's all different characters. And anyway, so I'm going to talk more about how I think it flows and how I think it does, as a show, as opposed to like giving away plot points. But it's Damon Lindelof that created this version of Watchmen, and he is one of the creators of Lost, which I love, and he's done a couple other things. He did a show called The Leftovers, which I never saw, but that was another one on HBO that was fairly popular for a few years. But so basically, this takes place. Okay, so Damon Lindelof has said that this is not like a sequel to the movie or the book or a reboot necessarily, but he has called it a remix, which I think seems about right judging from the first episode. So essentially, the the book starts like in the 50s, and the movie as well, I guess. But this starts way back in 1912 in the Black Wall Street massacre, which, there were a couple memes that I saw going around, this week about, white people, learning about the Black Wall Street massacre from the Watchmen. And I'm one of them. This is not a part of history I was aware of, but apparently in 1912 there was, a very affluent section of, I guess it was Oklahoma, right? And basically they were all massacred, and except for like a few people. And this is not something I had ever heard of. So I think it's awesome that this show is, shining a light on that, especially because, race relations are sort of the template of this show. And Regina King plays she's the star basically of the show, which, listen, you had me at Regina King. Like, I freaking love her. So when I found out she was in it, but she plays Sister Night. That's her, Watchman name. But she is also part of the Tulsa Police Department and sort of a vigilante in her own right. So, but it, flashes forward from there. So it starts before the comic, 1912, but then it takes place in present day. So we're now 97, 98 years, from the 1921 riots. So that's sort of where the show begins, and then it goes off in several different directions from there. Jeremy Irons is present here. Actually, the cast is real good. Don Johnson's a part of it. Louis Gossett Jr. is a part of it. There's people coming up that were not in the first episode, that I'm interested about. Gene Smart, Francis Fisher, speaking of 6 Feet Under, James Wolk. So I guess they'll be in some later episodes. But Jeremy Irons essentially plays, Ozymandias, and I can't. I'm not going to give away anything else. That's all I'm going to say about the plot of the show. But here's what I think it did well. Many things. I think. Listen. Here's the thing with me and the Watchmen. I didn't like the movie Watchmen really very much at all. I think I gave it a C, and that was, in my opinion, being generous. I've never wanted to watch it again. I think it's way too convoluted. The person I saw it with was a fan of the graphic novel, and going into it, he had said, I don't know how they're going to make this into one movie, because it seems like it would be better suited for a mini-series or something like that. And after watching it, even though it's almost 3 hours, I felt the same way. Like, I felt there was so much unexplored about that movie. Not to mention, I don't really like Zack Snyder. Most of his movies, I think, are pretty bad. Now, I admit I've never seen 300. People get on me for that. But like, Sucker Punch is not good. Batman v Superman, a lot of problems. So I'm not a very big Zack Snyder fan. I thought Justice League was okay. Actually, it was better than okay. I enjoyed Justice League a decent amount. I think I gave it a B. But most of his projects I don't like. I don't like his style of shooting. I don't like all the slow-mo stuff. So this offered me a new version of Watchmen that diverts from the source material and from the movie. But I think, remix is a good word for it. Damon Lindelof, I think, hit the nail on the head by calling it that, because that's basically what it is. I think if you are in love with the graphic novel, I can see you having issues with this. Moore himself said, that he really didn't approve of this. So that's not the best, But Lindelof has said similar things about his own stuff. He's like, you know what, if somebody wanted to redo Lost in 20 years and sort of take a different tone to it, or a different time period or whatever, and a different cast of characters, he doesn't know how he would feel about that either. So it's like, so at least, and that's the cool thing, like, Lindelof gets it, and he's a big fan of the source material, so I think he's not trying to be disrespectful at all. I think he's really trying to keep with the tone of the book, but also put his own spin on it, his own stamp on it. And look, Regina King is just, she's one of the best. I'm so glad that after, I don't know, 25 years in the industry, she's finally getting her due in the last few years. She's won Golden Globes, she's won Emmys, she won an Oscar this year for If Beale Street Could Talk. So as soon as I found out she was in this, I was like, yep. Even though I didn't like the movie, and honestly, I don't know if I would have watched it if it wasn't for this review show, because I really am trying to hit just about all the big ticket items here, and Watchmen is certainly one of them. But when I found out she was in it, I was like, okay, now I want to watch it. I just have such bad associations with the movie version, but I think they do so many interesting things here. I love the whole backdrop of the Black Wall Street riots. I think it is so great how they've incorporated that into a racially charged tone for the show. The action sequences are really great. The twist at the end of the first episode is, I would say, not much of a twist if you know the source material that well. That's about the biggest spoiler I can give you, or that I want to give you, I should say. But I like what was done with it. I think the acting is stellar. HBO never spares any expense for their shows. I don't watch Game of Thrones, I never have, but even I can tell you, just from seeing stills and stuff, that the set pieces are crazy good, and the attention to detail, other than that Starbucks cup in the one scene, is elaborate. Sorry, my board just fell down here. I have a board that says all the shows that I'm reviewing, in case I forget. But anyway, so in conclusion, I guess, for Watchmen, I think it's really cool. It's going to be, I think, 10 episodes total, or maybe it's 8 actually. It's always hard to tell with HBO what they're going to do. Okay, it looks like there's 9 episodes. So there you go. And most of them have been written by Damon Lindelof with 1 or 2 other people. There's only one in the mix that he didn't write at all. So that's good too. I like the consistency idea of that. Hard to say where it's going to go from here, and if they can keep it afloat. But I still am holding out hope that at some point maybe we'll get a faithful recreation of the graphic novel in a miniseries version, because the movie didn't do it for me. And look, I've never read the graphic novel. I've seen some of it, but I've never read it, so I'm going off of what I'm told by people. But I tended to agree that the movie just did not do enough. Like, there was so much going on that I just think 2 hours and 43 minutes was just never going to cover it. So I felt the same about the Dark Tower movie that came out, what was that, 2 years ago, I guess now. I never read the source material for that, but even I know that, like, from watching the movie, that there was way too much going on that they couldn't really process in 2.5 hour movie. So maybe eventually we'll get a mini-series version of the graphic novel Watchmen, but I don't think that's what this is going for. Clearly they're going for a different sort of speed with it, and a different not tone, because the tone is very much similar, I should say, but just sort of a different version of the themes. Some of the characters are in this from before, and a lot are new. So I'm interested to see how it goes and where it goes. But I think it's very compelling, and I am going to leave Watchmen with an A-. Up next is Limetown. Now, this is over on Facebook Watch, which I have never seen anything on. Apparently, they actually started doing shows like a couple of years ago on Facebook Watch, and then sort of backed off for a little bit, and I guess got all their ducks in a row, and now they're doing some other things. Apparently, they have the latest season of The Real World. MTV's not running it anymore. They have it on Facebook Watch now, which I can't tell you the last time I watched a show on MTV, so I didn't even know Real World was still on, but it is, everybody. But listen, I've heard a lot about this show. I've been seeing commercials for it, I think on Hulu. But it's with Jessica Biel and Stanley Tucci, and it's based on a very popular podcast. Now, my podcasting is basically like I'll listen to comedy podcasts. I like interview podcasts. I don't do a lot of like the true crime stuff. I know that's super popular, but I don't do that. So I was not really aware of this podcast. I mean, I may have heard about it in passing, but apparently this show follows the plotline of the podcast very closely. So it's essentially a fictitious crime podcast. Like, true crime is all about something that really happened. This is like it's the same sort of style as a true crime podcast, but the crime is fake. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but so here we go. So we've got Leah Haddock, who's a journalist for American Public Radio, which is their version, obviously, of NPR, and that's played by Jessica Biel here, and she's unraveling the mystery of 300 people disappearing in Tennessee years and years ago, including her uncle, who is played by Stanley Tucci. And basically, each episode sort of deals... Well, I watched 2 episodes for. Usually, I'm only watching the first episode and grading that. But sometimes I need 2 episodes with something. And that happened with the lawyer shows from earlier this year. I decided to do 2 episodes. But here, there's 10 episodes total, but Facebook Watch is doing 2 every week. So I said, you know what, I'll watch the first 2 since they premiered on the same day. So the first episode is really just kind of getting the background of the event and sort of her personality a little bit. And I'm really glad that I watched the second one as well, because it's a lot different sort of tonally than the first one, in terms of just like there's more of a plot, and like she goes and interviews this woman that was there, and there's the whole mystery element opens up way more with the second episode. So I'm very glad that I decided to do that, because I think if I were grading it on just the first episode, it would not be a high grade. I'm on the fence about how I feel about Stanley Tucci's character, and honestly, even his performance. I'm not positive you need him in the show. I sort of like that the whole point of his character is that he's, related to her, and so that makes it more personal for her. But I'm not sure if you need an actual character represented in the show for that. And I like Stanley Tucci a lot. He's a cool guy. When I went to Comic-Con a few years ago in Philadelphia, he was there as part of the... I guess he was there as part of the Captain America Winter Soldier panel or whatever. But he's the only person I paid to get their autograph. So I like Stanley Tucci. He's a cool dude. I don't know how he really fits in here. It's a little shoehorned, and I would rather see more about her and the interviews with the people and how it's affecting her job and all that. So, but I think she gives a great performance. I don't honestly know how many Jessica Biel things I've seen. Let me look at her sort of history here. Okay, Seventh Heaven. Yeah, I never watched that. I remember hearing that she was on there. Good old Seventh Heaven. Rules of Attraction, I never saw. Blade Trinity, never saw. Elizabethtown. Okay, I did see The Illusionist. That's a good movie. Chuck and Larry, that movie sucks, but I did see it. The A-Team I saw, but she doesn't have a big role in that. Total Recall, not that good, the reboot. So I have seen some of these, but they're just not great movies. Playing for Keeps was terrible. Accidental Love was terrible. All right, so yeah, I mean, most of these things I don't know. I just haven't seen. But I think she does a good job in this. I can't say it like blew me away, but I think she does a very solid job. I think she does a good job of sort of conveying the urgency of like trying to figure it out. I'm not sure if all the plot points make sense yet. Maybe they will, but so far the mystery element is cool. The suspense of it is good. But yeah, I'm not positive that everything makes sense that I've heard so far from the first two episodes. But as it is a mystery, I'm gonna let it unravel. And I'm definitely curious to see where it goes. So this is one I will stick with. I give Limetown a B. Up next, we move over to Netflix for the next two shows I'm going to talk about. Living with Yourself is the first one, and that is, I think I called it Living with Myself earlier, but this is Paul Rudd playing himself. Or, well, I shouldn't say he's playing himself. He's not playing Paul Rudd. He is actually playing a character. I can even tell you his name. It's Miles Elliott. But he is also playing Miles's clone. Miles 2 or whatever. So the basic plot is he is, has a run-of-the-mill job, run-of-the-mill life. He's bored with his life, classic. It reminded me, actually, the opening couple of scenes reminded me of Matt Damon in Downsizing, which is a horrible movie, by the way. But same sort of conceit of, like, this dude is just going through the motions, not happy, whatever. One of his buddies from work is like, oh, dude, you got to try this spa, let him know I referred you, whatever. So he goes to this spa, not really knowing what it's about, and he wakes up basically in the woods in his underwear, in a hole, and, gets up from that, gets home, and finds out that there's now two of him. So the two of them go back to the clinic and say, listen, you got to fix this. We want to refund this and that. And the guy at the clinic's like, honestly, we didn't think it would work. Like, you're supposed to be dead. Like, this is the first time it's ever actually worked, da 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 da. So that's sort of where the first episode ends. So that's basically that. But, as it is a Netflix show, if you're interested in this, you can watch all the episodes now. I think there's 10 of them. No, there's only 8. Okay. Boy, they confuse me. Some of these have 8, some of these have 10. They don't do a lot of 13s anymore on Netflix. But so this has 8 episodes. Real easy watch. They're all like a half hour. This is an afternoon binge for sure. I think Paul Rudd is the perfect person for this role. I think he gives it a lot. Because you need an everyman. You need somebody who you could see this happening to and then freaking out about. But not in like a over-the-top way. Like, I don't know, Paul Rudd has such an everyman quality. I think it's why he is, so good as Ant-Man. I think it's why he worked as Phoebe's husband on Friends. And I think you need somebody like that for this kind of a character. So, I like what I've seen so far. It's a comedy. So, it's all done sort of tongue-in-cheek, Downsizing's error, among many other things, was that I think it took itself way too seriously, and here, it's not that, there's certainly some dramatic elements of it, but, Paul Rudd is really doing his best to unravel the puzzle of his characters and the clone and which one's the real one, and I really really enjoyed it. I think I don't know if Netflix goes into some of these projects with a set like, okay, this is all that it's going to be. There's only going to be X amount of episodes. We're not going to do a second season, because that's what they did with Unbelievable, the one I reviewed on the first news and reviews episode. which has apparently become one of Netflix's top series of all time in its like first month viewings or something, which is awesome because other than me watching it, I still don't know anyone that's seen it, and I haven't heard anybody talking about it. So it's cool that it's gotten that sort of cachet out of it, because I guess there's just so much to watch right now. It's hard to tell, but this seems like it could just be the 8 episodes in miniseries form. And plot-wise, I think as long as they wrap it up well, it would make sense. Like, I don't think they're going for, like, the Patty Duke show here, where it's going to run for 6 years or whatever. Plus, Paul Rudd's such a huge movie star at this point. I don't know that he wants to do... I mean, I guess it's an easy, 8 episodes, but him playing his clone is not easy, I would imagine. So, but I liked it a lot. I thought it was really funny. And I don't like it wasn't like gut bustingly funny, but it's one of those sort of like slice of life, like okay, I see what you did there, but also you're putting yourself in Paul Rudd's shoes, and you're like, okay, so dude comes home from a hole in the ground, finds his clone, and you sort of think, okay, what would I do in that situation? How would I handle it? Whatever. So, but anyway, I think Paul Rudd is the perfect guy for it. I think he does a great job. I'm not sure. I don't know. It's hard to say after only watching the first episode. This is one I probably had enough time. I could have watched all 8 episodes. But I feel like if they wrap it up well, it could be a standalone and just sort of limited series, mini series, whatever they call it these days. But I could also, see it going the distance if they can get enough mileage out of it, and sort of the mystery element of what happened and how he's going to fix it and how he's going to, utilize it in his everyday life if they can't fix it. So we'll see. But for now, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good first episode. I give Living with Yourself a B+. So still on the Netflix tip here, we've got Raising Dion, which this is actually based on some source material work as well. It's based on a 2015 comic book and short film, also called Raising Dion, which I've never heard of any of this. In fact, I barely heard about it on Netflix, but it came up as things to watch or whatever. I said, well, I'm trying to watch as many things as I can, so why not? So the basic premise here is there is a single mom who is raising her son Dion, as the title might suggest, after the death of Mark, her husband, who is played in, I wouldn't even call them flashbacks, but just sort of appearances by Michael B. Jordan. And essentially, right in the kind of like the first scene of the first episode, we learn that Dion, he thinks he's magic, but we're learning that he actually might have these superpowers. Well, not might, he does. He does have superpowers, but he doesn't quite know what they are or what to do with them yet, and he calls it, doing magic. Mom, I can do magic. So basically, his mom has to figure out how to balance keeping her son's, superhero-ness a secret, but also, letting him be himself and, all the normal single mom stuff. So, and also to add to it, they are an African-American family, so there's some race stuff there as well. He's sort of ostracized at school a little bit. And that kind of thing. So that's the basic plot. And again, here, I only watched the first episode, as I've been doing. So the kid Dion is played by Josiah Young, I believe is how you would pronounce it, Josiah. And then Alicia Wainwright is his mom, Nicole. And so those are basically the main characters. And then Michael B. Jordan, like I said, appears as the deceased father. And he just died shortly before the events of the episode. But He was a scientist, and oh, actually, you know who else is in it is Jason Ritter, who I always love to see, my buddy. He is, one of Mark's former coworkers, but he still works at the bio research lab. But Mark obviously has passed on, so they don't work together anymore. But they were coworkers, so he kind of takes Dion under his wing as well as sort of a father figure type. And it's always nice to see him. So I think this show has potential, but I don't think it's quite there yet. I think the kid is a really good actor. This Josiah Young. I think he's good. I think the mom is great, but I'm not positive that all of it comes together quite yet. I'm definitely intrigued by it. I think it's got an interesting premise. I love that the lead really of the show is this kid. I mean, he's got to be. I think he's a 7-year-old in the show, but I'm sure the actor's probably like 9 or something. But anyway, he's a young boy, and I think it's really neat because we always see superheroes with that are either adults or at the very least like high school, like Peter Parker type stuff. But if not, usually they're grown ass adults. So I think it's an interesting device to have him be just a little kid in elementary school, doesn't even know much about the world yet, let alone his superpowers. I think the drawbacks of the series thus far is that the CGI is not all that great. For all the money Netflix spends on stuff. Obviously, this was not a high-profile show for them because I don't think they really spent the money that they do on certain other shows. So that is a little bit of a drawback. The acting by some of the other people is not very good. The main cast is real good, especially, like I said, the kid, the mom, and then, of course, Jason Ritter. Michael B. Jordan sort of seems shoehorned in here. Maybe not quite as much as Stanley Tucci in Limetown, but I feel like there was some decree that came down from the powers that be at Netflix that was like, hey, you need to have a name actor in this show, and hey, why don't you have him play the dead dad? I don't know. I think it makes a little more sense than the Stanley Tucci thing in Limetown, in terms of like having him show up on screen and stuff, but it sort of almost seems like stunt casting. Like you really need a name actor here. So I don't know how I feel about that. So there's definitely some positives and some negatives here. It's a bit middling for me. Will I continue to watch it? Maybe, but it's not going to be one that is on the top of my list. I think there's certainly other things to get to. But I certainly didn't hate it. I think there's some potential there, but it certainly doesn't reach it in the first episode. So I'm going to leave Raising Dion with a B-. And finally, we're going to end with a game show. I try to end with something. These are all pretty heavy shows. Even Living with Yourself, which is a comedy, is still sort of, the themes are very heavy. Human cloning and whatnot. So let's end with something upbeat and fun. Although even in itself it has sort of a twisted lean, and that is this new game show called The Misery Index. This is on TBS, which I actually don't have cable anymore, but God bless TBS, they put it up on their app for free, and so you can watch this on the TBS app. It's a game show with Jamila Jamil, who plays on The Good Place. Love her. She's great. And also, if you're a fan of Impractical Jokers, the 4 dudes from that show are on here as well as basically contestants helping out the non-famous contestant. So the essential plot points of the game are this. First of all, it's based on a card game, which I was not familiar with, called Stuff Happens. And there's an adult version called, I don't like to curse on this channel, but, S Happens. So basically they have asked a handful, I guess, of psychologists and given them all these crazy stories from around the world, of people, doing weird things or having something awful happen to them or whatever. And these psychologists give it a 1 to 100 rating on the misery index based on 3 different criteria, which is like, physical pain, long lasting psychological effects, and I don't know, something else, I forget. But anyway, so there's 2 contestants facing off against each other. Jamila will read them something, and they have to determine basically where it is on the misery index, like what number. And so each contestant has 2 members of the Impractical Jokers helping them, and of course they're making jokes and stuff as we go along. And so round 1 is you have 2 things that they put on the index. They tell you what they are, and then they give you a 3rd thing, and you have to determine whether or not it goes before the first one, after the second one, or in between the 2. And then so they get, whatever, I think it's 500 points or something if they get that right. And then, or maybe it's $500. And then round 2 is, the whole show is basically this, but there's different ways to do it. So round 2 is they give you 2 things, and you have to say which one is higher, and then I think there's a round 3 too, and then the bonus round is you have to sort of put the misery index within 30 points. Then the second one, you have to put it within 20 points of the correct answer, and then third one within 10 points, and then you win increasing amounts of money. I think that the setup to the show is interesting. I think Jamila is a good host. She's a very likable person. She's a likable character in The Good Place, even with all her faults as a character. The guys from the Tenderloins and Impractical Jokers, I think that show is kind of overrated. To be completely honest. So take that for what it's worth. I think they can be funny. I do. But I also think, I don't know. I feel like they make themselves laugh more than they make me laugh. And I know the show's very popular, and I'm probably in the minority on that. So it's okay. But that's just how I feel about it. I think they have some funny lines on this game show. Have they all been pre-written? I don't know. We've seen them be funny spontaneously too. I remember round 3 is actually taking a clip from Impractical Jokers and basically guessing the range of where that particular sequence ends up on the misery scale. So that's sort of, it all ties into that. First of all, it's great promotion for Impractical Jokers. Not that it really needs promoting. It's such a popular show already. But it's cool that there's all this synergy because TBS owns whatever channel that's on. I think it's True TV. So, they're all owned by Turner. So it's like, okay, hey, you guys come over to this game show, whatever. So it's fun. Here's my issue though with the main game is that there's no real skill involved. So I feel like after you watch 5 or 6 episodes, you'll have a real good idea of how these psychologists think and what they will rate things. So I don't know the longevity of a show like this, and there's no skill involved. There's not trivia. It's not it's almost like, I don't know. There's definitely fun shows with no skill. I don't think Match Game requires a lot of skill. You're putting your fate in the hand of 6, half-assed celebrities, and either they are smart or they're stupid. It's beyond your control. But I don't know. So there's no skill to this game really at all. You just have to kind of guess what you think falling, 10 flights down an elevator rates, as opposed to a kid stealing a Pop-Tart from his mom's kitchen and then being kicked out of the house to live in the woods. So it's like, okay, cool. But like I say, I think after 5 or 6 episodes, people will figure out, okay, well, here's what they're going to rate this. So I don't see the longevity necessarily of a show like this, but I am interested to get the card game at this point. I looked and it doesn't quite seem to still be in print, but there's like other versions of the theme out there. So I don't know. I love a good game night. I play game nights all the time with my friends, so it might be fun to pop out at a game night. But as a show to watch regularly, I don't know. I mean, I think if you like the Impractical Jokers, yeah. But I'm not sure of the longevity prospects of a show like this. So I'm gonna leave the Misery Index with a C. Um, yeah, there's no skill involved really, and there it will be a skill. I think once you've watched enough episodes, you could basically predict exactly, within a couple points what these experts are gonna say. So that's what I think of that. So all right, well that is the show for this week. I'm going to try and watch as many of the Apple TV Plus shows as I can over the next couple of days here. They're going live tomorrow. So I'm going to watch as much of that as I can, and then next week's TV News and Reviews is going to be all about Apple Plus TV or Apple TV Plus or whatever the hell it's called. And, I definitely want to watch the morning show program with Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon and Steve Carell. 3 of my favorites right there. So that one is one I may just binge all the way through. But we'll see. I think there's a lot of other shows on there that are coming on. I'd like to, give everybody their due here. But so that will be the review portion of the next show here. But there are still a bunch of things premiering on like cable channels and stuff that I want to get to, at Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and all that. So definitely more to come, from that as well. But thank you so much for watching, and enjoy all the other great stuff on the channel. There's going to be a new Freezer Friday up soon, more Disney movies coming, and some food stuff as well. I just went to Canada last week. I brought back some Canadian munchies for me and Merlin to check out. So we'll do that soon as well. But that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Please comment below. Let me know what you thought about any of these shows. And I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.